When Sophia fell to her knees at the edge of the hospital corridor, drenched in rain and pleading through a cracked voice, I didn't move. Her fingers trembled as they reached for mine, blood from her temple mixing with the stormwater pooling around her heels. "John," she gasped. "I chose wrong, I know that now." But I didn't offer her warmth, nor did I whisper back the name I'd once carved into my every prayer. I looked past her, to the woman behind her. Deborah stood holding the umbrella over my head, her free hand tightening around the necklace Sophia had once thrown away. A nurse pushed a gurney past us. Sirens still echoed faintly in the distance. The world kept moving, but my world had stopped years ago, on the day Sophia walked into our home with Ryan and told me she was tired of pretending. Sophia collapsed forward, catching herself with both palms against the pavement. Her wedding dress, once white, was stained with blood from the crash, dust from the gravel, and guilt she couldn't wash away. I didn't kneel, I didn't speak. She had knelt before me once before, in the garden of my grandfather's sanatorium. Not to beg forgiveness, but to fasten the cufflink I had bought for our engagement dinner. Her voice had been soft then, too, calculated. "John, let me make your family proud," she had whispered. But she was never mine. She was always Ryan's, and I had always known. The first time I saw them together, his hand brushing her lower back as they stood too close in the reflection of the mirror, I convinced myself it was innocent, that he was helping her with her posture, that it was just tutoring. The second time, I saw her give him the brooch she had claimed belonged to her grandmother. The same design she'd once pretended to give me, but in my box, the pin was hollow, cheap, a decoy. That night, I sat in our bedroom while she reheated bird's nest soup for Ryan and Collie. Dit medicinal. She never once asked if I'd eaten. When my mother, long presumed lost to early onset dementia, grabbed my wrist in the sanatorium garden and whispered, "She's not here for love, John, she's here for what your father built," I wanted to believe it was just a symptom of her illness. But my mother had always seen through facades, just like Deborah did. The ambulance doors opened again behind me, breaking the silence. Ryan's body was loaded into the back, conscious but coughing, a neck brace holding his greed together. Sophia had saved him. She pulled him from the wreckage with her own hands, screaming his name louder than she ever spoke mine. She fractured a rib doing it. Split her palm open on shattered glass. And now, at the edge of the emergency room I funded, the woman I nearly gave my legacy to was finally crying for me. Too late. "I know everything now," she choked out. "I know what Ryan did to you. I know he was after the company. I should have believed you. I should have never." I turned away before she finished. "Deborah," I said quietly, "let's go home." And Sophia, still kneeling in the mud and memory, whispered after me with the voice of a woman who had lost something irretrievable. "John, please, I loved you, I just forgot how to show it." But by then, I was already walking away, the umbrella shielding me from a storm I had lived through alone for far too long. The first time I saw Sophia, she was standing barefoot in the east courtyard, arms outstretched, trying to scare off crows from the memorial stones. Her dress was torn at the hem, her hair tied in an uneven ponytail, and her knuckles were scraped from climbing the peach tree again. She was 9, I was 10. And I'd just been told by my tutor that heirs don't run. But she did. Sophia ran, like the world hadn't yet taught her to kneel. She was the daughter of our housemaid, Mira, who had served my grandfather since the war. My father used to call her a shadow that won't leave. He never said it kindly, but even he could never bring himself to remove her. My mother, before the illness, simply said, "Some debts can't be repaid with a wage slip." And so Sophia stayed, sleeping on a floor mattress in the servant wing, attending school through scholarships and second-hand books. Our world should have been separate. But one rainy morning, I returned from Latin lessons with blood on my chin. My cousin Julian had decided I needed discipline, and no one in the house was going to challenge a future board member. I didn't cry. I sat on the garden bench and stared at the storm. That's when Sophia appeared. She didn't ask if I was hurt, she didn't look shocked. She just sat beside me, pulled a handkerchief from her pocket, embroidered with daisies, and pressed it gently to my face. Then she said, "Next time, duck." I laughed through the blood. From that day, she became my shadow, not because she had to, but because she chose to. She kept my secrets, hid my broken glasses, covered for me when I skipped dinner, And when my father called me soft, she stood taller beside me, daring him to look. By the time we were 15, the household whispered. They called it infatuation, puppy love, the naive warmth of two broken things finding each other. But I loved her like the sun, quietly, constantly. And from a distance when needed. She was smart, fierce, unapologetically herself. When the headmaster insulted her background, she rewrote the school's debate policy and beat him at his own game. When she was voted out of student council because of family status, she launched her own campaign and built a following 3 times the size. And through it all, I stood in the shadows she used to live in, watching her grow, protecting her when I could, admiring her when I couldn't. On our graduation day, while the other girls wore ivory dresses and dreams stitched in pearls, Sophia wore a simple blue midi dress with her mother's shawl. She held my hand backstage and whispered, "You know they'll never accept me." I smiled. Good thing I'm not asking them. I proposed on the rooftop of the Liu Group headquarters, the empire my grandfather left me. No press, no photographers, just her, me, a ring I spent years designing, and a cherry blossom tree I had planted when we were children. She cried. She said yes. For 3 years, we built a life of rhythm and trust. She worked in the cultural sector, building programs for underprivileged artists. I expanded our logistics arm, restructuring old family contracts. We shared passwords, calendars, even toothbrushes during airport layovers. She made me tea before meetings. I rubbed her feet after gallery launches. We didn't just coexist. We moved like water in the same glass. But there were signs. Small things. She began hiding her phone during calls. Laughing too quietly at texts she didn't explain. Canceling dinners with emergencies that didn't add up. I told myself it was stress. That she was trying to prove herself. That loving me came with weight and she just needed time to breathe. But then came the fundraiser. She arrived in a gown I hadn't seen before, deep green silk that hugged her waist in ways only a lover would notice. Her earrings sparkled like something borrowed, her eyes scanned the room, not for me, but for someone else, and when I followed her outside later that night, I saw her lean into Ryan. My oldest friend. His hand brushed her lower back, just like he used to do in college, before she and I were ever a we. I wanted to believe it was harmless, but her smile gave it away. It wasn't soft, it was sharp. Cut for someone who knew where to press. I didn't confront her. I didn't scream. I waited. I hoped she would come to me. She didn't. 2 weeks later, Ryan announced a partnership with a rival company we'd long avoided. He called it a bridge between futures. Sophia applauded from the front row. That night, I returned home to silence. She was cooking bird's nest soup in the kitchen, the same dish my mother used to make me when I was sick. But when she set it down, she looked surprised. "Oh," she said, glancing at the tray. "Sorry, this one's for Ryan. He's staying over. His back pain's been flaring again." She didn't make me one, and I sat there, staring at the steam rising from a bowl meant for the man who touched her waist in shadows. I wanted to leave then, but then my mother spoke. It was the first time she'd been coherent in years. Her rebirth had been gradual, small fragments returning after decades of medication and memory loss. But that night, she was fully herself again. She called me into her room, her eyes clear, her voice steady. She held my hand like she had when I was 5 and scared of storms, and she said, "Sophia will betray you the moment she gets her status back." I didn't believe her, not then. But I remembered that line later. When Sophia stood beside Ryan on the cover of Forbes Asia, the title beneath them reading, "The New Power Couple, Redefining Legacy." It was my mother who insisted I go. After her sudden lucidity, she asked for a walk. Not around the estate, not in the gallery or library. She wanted to visit the old sanatorium garden, the one behind the cliffs where the magnolia trees grew over forgotten benches. A place once reserved for solitude and convalescence, now barely visited, locked away behind time and moss-covered brick. "Just humor me," she said, her hand resting on my arm as she walked. I didn't argue. How could I? She had been quiet for years, her mind a maze of fragments and sedation, but something about her tone that morning, sharp, almost bitter, cut deeper than any speech she'd made in her prime. The garden was nearly silent, save for the wind playing with dry leaves. We walked slowly. My mother hummed something under her breath, Then she paused, near the rusted trellis. "I want you to see," she said, "but don't let them see you." That was when I heard her voice. Familiar, lively, deceptively sweet. "Once I get the company back, I'll leave with you." I froze. My mother stepped back into the shadows. I crept forward, inch by inch, heart cracking with every syllable that floated past the overgrown hedge. Ryan stood with his back to me, in a navy coat, scarf draped around his neck like he hadn't slept indoors in weeks. Sophia stood in front of him, fingers nervously twisting around a cloud-shaped brooch clipped onto her collar. That brooch, I had never seen it before. Not like the one she gave me months ago. Mine was silver, polished, a classic piece in the shape of a feather, something she said reminded her of our childhood days under the willow tree. But this one shimmered with pale opal in the shape of a cloud, its design intricate, handcrafted, delicate, intimate, the kind of gift you didn't give a friend. Ryan reached forward, gently touching the brooch. "It suits you," he said, his voice low. "Almost like it was made for you." Sophia smiled, but there was tension in her lips. She whispered again, a little firmer this time. "Just let me marry John. Once I get the company back, I'll leave with you, I promise." I felt something hollow open in my chest. He didn't argue. He pulled her into his arms, kissed the top of her head, and then, "You always know how to play the long game," he murmured. "But hurry, I'm tired of being the secret." Sophia leaned into him, and I stood there, behind the stone pillar, feeling every ounce of air leave my lungs. That night, I said nothing. I returned home before her, sat at the end of the hallway, lights off, hands cold. When she arrived, she didn't notice me. She walked into the kitchen, humming. The scent of almond and jujube filled the air. Bird's nest soup, my favorite, except this time, there were 2 bowls, only 1 tray. I watched from the shadows as she carefully garnished the top with goji berries, wiped the rim with a warm cloth, and gently placed a spoon beside it. She even sprinkled in the hint of rock sugar, the way she never forgot I liked it. But when Ryan emerged from the guest room, stretching like he belonged here, she smiled like nothing had happened. "You shouldn't strain your back," she said. "Come, it's still warm." I remained in the hallway, frozen. Ryan sat at our table, in my seat. She set the bowl in front of him, fussing over the angle of the spoon like it mattered, and then, without hesitation, she scooped up the first bite herself, blew on it softly, and lifted it to his lips. "Careful, it's hot." He opened his mouth. She fed him like she'd never fed me, like I was never in the picture at all. I didn't move, didn't speak, didn't rage or cry. I simply stood there, my hands shaking, as I watched the woman I proposed to, who once wore my ring and said she'd grow old beside me, spoon-feed the man who replaced me. The next time I sat at that table, I told myself it would be different. I had practiced my expression in the mirror, neutral, polite, not wounded, not desperate, just composed. I wore the shirt she liked on me, pale gray with narrow cuffs. I trimmed my beard, combed my hair back, even smiled when she walked in. Ryan followed close behind. He took the seat beside her. She didn't blink. Dinner was quiet. Chicken stew, lotus root, steamed rice, bowls carefully portioned, and bird's nest soup again, 3 servings this time. Deborah had cooked, Sophia only plated. The chair across from me was empty. She said it was for appearance. "If the board ever visits," she whispered last week, "we'll need to seem like a family." I nodded. I told myself I could pretend for one more evening. Halfway through the meal, I felt my throat tighten. A slow, creeping itch clawed down my neck. My chest burned, my eyes watered. A sharp pulse ran down the side of my jaw. The spoon slipped from my hand. I pushed back from the table, gasping. Sophia looked up, barely. "John?" I staggered, gripping the side of the table. My vision swam. The walls seemed to tilt, the air grew thinner with every second. I knocked over a cup, spilled hot tea across my wrist. I couldn't breathe. Ryan stood, but he didn't move toward me. "And Sophia?" She screamed, but not for me. "Ryan, your arm, are you okay?" He had scalded himself slightly with the tea splash, a single red welt near his wrist. I collapsed. Face first, onto the hardwood. I remember the sound of the bowl shattering. I remember the vibration in my skull as it hit the ground, And then, nothing. When I opened my eyes, the ceiling was unfamiliar, white, sterile, unforgiving. The IV was already in my arm, my throat sore from the oxygen. The nurse was adjusting something beside me. I looked around, blinking against the overhead light. Sophia wasn't there. Ryan wasn't as either. No flowers, no voice, no waiting hand holding mine. Just Deborah. She sat in the corner, coat still damp from rain, hair pulled back in a rushed bun. A book lay unopened on her lap. She didn't notice me stir at first, but then she looked up, her eyes softened. "You're awake," she said, her voice quiet. "They said it was anaphylaxis. You're lucky you got here in time." I tried to speak, but only a rough croak came out. She poured water, helped me drink, adjusted the blanket without being asked. "They used peanut oil in the stew," she added. "You always said you hated it, but no one checked the ingredients." My chest ached, not from the reaction, from everything else. "Where's Sophia?" I asked. Deborah looked away. "She left with Ryan. They had a board dinner, said they couldn't reschedule." Silence stretched thin between us. Deborah stood, smoothing her skirt. "I'll step outside. Let the nurse know you're awake." She paused at the door. "For what it's worth, John." "I'm sorry." The door clicked shut. Later that night, I turned to the side. The sheets were too crisp, the room too quiet. In the glass of the window, my reflection stared back at me, pale, drained, hollowed. I remembered the night I first realized I loved her. I was 12, she was 10. A storm had knocked out the power. The house was pitch dark, the wind howling like an animal. I was curled up in the corner of the staircase, hands over my ears, pretending I wasn't afraid. Sophia found me. No flashlight, no candle, just her voice. She didn't say a word, she just sat beside me, slipped her small arms around my shoulders and hummed a lullaby until I stopped shaking. Back then, that was love. No need for words, no questions, just presence. Now? Now, I could barely remember the last time she looked at me like I mattered. When I returned home 2 days later, no one asked how I felt. Sophia had already left for a press meeting. Ryan's car was parked in my slot. The maid mentioned they'd be back late. I walked into my room, everything untouched, except one thing. The drawer beside my bed was open. Inside, lying where it didn't belong, was the silver feather brooch she once gave me. A note lay beneath it. "Thought you might want this. It doesn't go with my new dresses." No signature. I sat on the edge of the bed, brooch in hand, heart slow and heavy. I remembered how she used to hold me when I was sick, how she brought soup and folded towels and stayed beside me until the fever broke. Now? She didn't even visit the hospital, not once. I turned the brooch in my fingers. It was light, cold, meaningless. Because now I knew, she never loved me the way I loved her. The ballroom smelled of roses and deceit. That year's spring banquet was hosted in the Grand Palais, a marble-draped illusion of chandeliers and chandeliers stacked upon each other as though overcompensating for the soullessness of the people beneath them. John stood near the end of the hall, fingers loosely curled around a glass of untouched wine. His tux was tailored, cufflinks understated, and yet the fabric scratched against his skin like a costume too tight for a role he no longer wanted to play. Sophia arrived late, as always, fashionably so. All camera lenses turned as she stepped through the arch, Ryan in tow. Her dress was a muted silver-gold gradient, designer, unmistakably, and her hair curled in effortless waves. But John's eyes weren't on the dress, they weren't on her arm, looped through Ryan's. They were on the brooch. Pinned just above Ryan's chest pocket. The heavenly cloud. It wasn't just a design, it was their design. A handcrafted motif Sophia had once sketched in the back of a garden notebook when she was 17. "I want to give this to the person who makes me feel like the sky is safe again," she had said back then, head against John's shoulder, pencil tracing soft arcs. "Not like a storm I have to survive." He had commissioned a craftsman in Prague to mold it. One of a kind, intricate, sterling silver with delicate etchings along the underside. The gift he thought meant something, because she told him it would. She had kept it for years. And now? It shimmered on Ryan's chest, right beside his smirk. John set the glass down without tasting it. His limbs were heavy, breath slow, the room blurred around the edges. But he didn't move. He watched from across the crowd, pretending not to feel the blade between his ribs. Sophia raised her glass, laughed too brightly, touched Ryan's wrist with a fondness John used to believe was his alone. Reporters snapped photos. The board members exchanged glances, whispers floated near the chandeliers. He heard his name. He shouldn't have walked closer, but he did. Behind a draped column, two socialites stood half-hidden, fanning themselves with pearl-decorated fans. "I thought she was still married," one whispered. "She is, but rumor is, he's just a formality now. They say he's sick, something mental." "Oh. And she said it herself. He has nothing to do with me." John stopped breathing for a moment. He had nothing to do with her. 19 years of memories, of shared books, childhood bruises, thunderstorm lullabies, proposal under moonlight. Now he was nothing. Not even a footnote. He backed away before his legs gave out. He didn't care where he was walking. The room narrowed, voices colliding around him. Then came the sound of gasping. Shouting. A crash of polished limbs against stairs. Ryan lay twisted at the bottom of the grand staircase. People rushed. Cameras clicked. Sophia screamed. John froze mid-step. He was still near the upper landing, too close, too visible. Sophia was already there, on her knees, her perfectly manicured fingers trembling as she touched Ryan's cheek. "Ryan! Ryan, are you hurt? Oh my God, someone call a doctor!" Blood trickled from a small scrape along Ryan's temple, nothing fatal, nothing deep. But just enough. Enough to turn the crowd into a courtroom. John didn't speak. He didn't need to. Ryan did it for him. I slipped," Ryan stammered, eyes wide and glossed with the perfect sheen of fear. "I think someone pushed." His gaze flicked toward John. It was subtle, but it was enough. Sophia followed it. Her eyes met John's across the marble expanse. And what she did next, she stood. Her hands clenched. Her expression, not shock, not confusion, not even sadness. Just cold certainty. "You pushed him," she said, voice slicing through the crowd like a verdict already decided. John didn't defend himself. He couldn't. He looked at her, really looked, and realized something so quiet and so final that he felt it break behind his ribs. It didn't matter what the truth was. It didn't matter that he hadn't touched Ryan. It didn't matter that the staircase had no railing and the floor had been wet. Because Sophia would always believe Ryan. Over him. Always. The crowd turned. The whispers grew teeth. The man who pushed her lover. The broken husband, the jealous heir. The cameras loved it. A security guard approached quietly. A member of the board muttered something about damage control. Deborah tried to push through the crowd, but was held back. And still John didn't speak. He only looked down the staircase where Ryan still clutched his ankle, and where Sophia stood in front of him like a shield. Not for John. Never again for John. She hadn't even asked if he was okay. Not once. And with the eyes of the room burning into his back, he turned and walked away. No explanations, no denials, no more hoping. Just silence. It started with a phone call. A familiar voice, Leonard, the old driver who had once driven Sophia and John to school events, who knew every alley in the city like the lines on his weathered palms. "Master John, there's something you should see. I wouldn't call unless it was serious." A location followed, the old printing alley behind Delacroix Street, disused, isolated, no cameras. John hesitated. The last time he trusted someone familiar, he ended up standing at the edge of a staircase watching his wife defend another man. Still, the voice held just enough tremble to sound real. He went. It was dusk. The city was settling into its orange glow, but that alley held none of it, only shadows and silence. "Leonard," he called. Footsteps behind him. Not one pair, three. John turned too late. The first blow came to his back, blunt and calculated. He stumbled forward, caught himself against the brick wall, pain ricocheting down his spine. The second hit came to his ribs, steel pipe, a third figure kicked his leg from behind. He dropped. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. One held his arms back. Another went for his face, deliberate punches that aimed not to kill, but to deform, to humiliate, to erase. He didn't scream. He gritted his teeth, vision blurring as copper filled his mouth. A tooth cracked, his wrist bent the wrong way under the weight of a boot. The final blow landed against his kneecap, sharp, decisive. A low crack echoed through the alley, and just like that, they vanished. He didn't know how long he lay there. Time blurred, blood pooled into the seams of the concrete. It wasn't until a teenage boy from the bakery across the street came to throw trash that someone screamed and called for help. By the time the ambulance arrived, John couldn't see out of his right eye. The hospital was a blur of ceiling lights and stitching needles. The news spread faster than his consciousness could catch up. Attempted murder, suspected gang involvement, inheritance scandal. Photos leaked. Sophia saw it on her phone before the police ever called her. She dropped her champagne glass. Ryan was lounging on her couch when she screamed. She didn't explain, just grabbed her coat, keys, and left. It was the first time in 2 years she ran for John. By the time she reached the police station, he was sitting quietly in a wheelchair, eye swollen shut, fingers splinted, lower leg in a brace. He didn't look at her, not once. "I want to press charges," he was telling the officer, his voice hoarse but unwavering. "Whoever sent them knew I would come. That makes it premeditated." Sophia barged in. "John!" He flinched. The officer gestured for silence, but John didn't stop speaking. "I want a restraining order. I want every alley in that district checked. I want to file the full report." Sophia stepped forward. "Let me speak, please." He finally looked up. Not at her eyes, at her neck. She was wearing the silver locket he had given her on their 10th anniversary, the one she hadn't worn in years. Too late. "Who sent them?" he asked her, not with hope, but with a flatness that made her voice die in her throat. I don't know," she said. "Maybe people angry over the inheritance." "Don't lie," he said. "It doesn't suit you anymore." She blinked rapidly. "I didn't know, John, if I knew." He cut her off. "Ryan?" The name landed like ice between them. Sophia hesitated. That alone was enough. He leaned back in his chair, jaw tightening through the pain. "I already told the investigators to trace phone records. If it links to your number—" "It wasn't me," she cried. "I swear it wasn't. John, I didn't know." "But you knew he might." Silence. Sophia's face crumbled. "I never meant for this to happen. I swear I didn't think it would get this far." He said it was just a warning. John closed his eyes. Just a warning. They nearly shattered his spine. He would limp for life now. The orthopedic surgeon confirmed the knee damage would need ongoing therapy. His name was in the papers next to words like jealous, discarded, unstable, but the worst part wasn't the injury. It was the moment Sophia hesitated when asked if she suspected Ryan. She hadn't run for John. She had run to manage the damage. Sophia stepped forward. "I'm sorry, John. I'm truly sorry." He opened his eyes again, dead calm. "A late apology is not justice," he whispered. "It's redemption, and I'm not interested in your redemption." Her eyes welled up. She reached for his hand. He moved it away. Sophia broke. Her knees hit the floor. In a police station, the cameras caught it. The headlines shifted by morning. But it was too late. John pressed the charges. Not just for assault, but for conspiracy. He named Ryan. The investigation began. He declined Sophia's calls. He rejected her hospital flowers. He sent back the silver locket, by post. And 1 week later, with a brace on his leg and gauze still wrapped around his jawline, he quietly booked a one-way ticket to another city. His mother was waiting in the car when he emerged from the house. She didn't say a word, just opened the door. John looked back at the estate once, the place where he had loved, trusted, lost. Then he slid into the seat, closed the door, and left everything behind. The quiet life begins. John didn't build a palace in the new city, he built a routine. He rented a modest townhouse with a rooftop garden. He started painting again, landscapes this time, with no faces, no eyes that lied. His mother baked bread every Sunday, and Deborah, gentle, steadfast Deborah, took up part-time teaching at the local school. Their mornings began with silence and herbal tea. Their evenings ended with Johanna's soft laughter echoing down the stairs. Yes, Johanna, the little miracle, a name born from two people stitched back together after trauma. John and Deborah. She was not a replacement, she was a new beginning, and John never looked back. Meanwhile, in the city Sophia stayed in, Sophia began to unravel slowly. The first crack came with Ryan's arrest. Authorities had found messages, deleted but retrievable, that connected him to Leonard, the old driver. Payment transfers, a burner phone, location pings on the night John was ambushed. Sophia had delivered Ryan herself. Handcuffed him, told him through gritted teeth, "I believed you, and you broke every inch of that belief." He didn't flinch. "I didn't break it," he said. "You were just desperate to believe someone, anyone, who wasn't John." Then he said something worse. "You remember the parrot, the one that died when we were 15? She froze. He smirked. "Yeah, I poisoned it. Blamed him for leaving the window open. You cried on my shoulder that night." Sophia stumbled back. Ryan's voice followed her. "Some stories need a villain, you just picked the wrong one." She vomited in the police parking lot. She comes bearing ruins. Weeks later, she found herself standing at John's doorstep in the new city. She had nothing left, no company shares, no friends, no smile that could fix what she'd done. She held a box, inside, the brooch, the real one, the heavenly cloud she once claimed she handcrafted. D for Ryan. "It was always yours," she whispered when the door opened. "I lied, he made it. But I knew what it meant." John didn't even touch the box. He looked past her, to the inside of the house, to where Deborah was pouring tea, to where Johanna's giggle rang out like music. Sophia blinked. Her makeup was perfect, her smile was trembling. I made a mistake, I know that now, and I've paid, I delivered him to justice. Doesn't that mean anything?" John said nothing for a while, then, "It means you're finally capable of truth, but I no longer have a place for truth that arrives bleeding." She swallowed hard. "Please, just give me another chance, just one." He didn't even blink. "When you gave Ryan your bone marrow." His voice was quiet. "That was the end of our story. The wedding that never was, there had been rumors. Sophia, it was said, had booked a chapel. White orchids, a designer gown, a live quartet. The groom never showed, because he never existed. John had never accepted the invite she secretly sent through mutual friends. She stood alone at the altar, dozens of guests, dozens of white chairs, all pointed at her, not one at her side. Final chase, the city of new beginnings, she followed him, not with malice, with desperation. To the art gallery where his work hung, landscapes titled, "Before Storm, After Silence, What I Should Have Said." To the hospital where Deborah now taught music therapy. To the corner cafe where Johanna ate cinnamon rolls with sticky fingers. One day, Sophia finally dared to walk up. John and Deborah were sitting on a bench. He was holding Deborah's hand, no ring, just warmth. Johanna ran ahead, a paper crown on her head. "John," Sophia said softly, "I'm not here to break anything." He looked at her. She looked at their hands. And for the first time, she understood. She had never held John like that, never without agenda, never without performance. The hot spring years later, it was almost poetic. A remote hot spring lodge. Sophia had come to clear her mind. She taught art now, small workshops for emotionally troubled teens. It didn't pay well, but it was quiet. And then she saw the little girl. Dark eyes, sharp jawline, wide, unflinching gaze, drawing a bird in the steam on the window, Sophia approached with a quiet heart. "Hi," she said. "What are you drawing?" "A parrot," the girl said. "He died before I was born, but Daddy says he was very brave." Sophia blinked. "What's your name?" "Johanna," the girl replied brightly. "From John and Deborah, my mommy and daddy." Sophia's lips parted. Johanna went on. "Daddy says if he ever flies away like our parrot did, Mommy will find him, but Mommy never had to." Sophia stood still. It was a beautiful answer. beautiful, and final. Final scene. As the steam from the hot spring blurred the glass, Sophia rose. She didn't cry. She just smiled. Softly. Hollowly. Then walked away from the girl. From the past. From everything she never truly cherished until it no longer belonged to her. And in the silence of the fog, her voice echoed, "John, may your next life never meet someone like me."